Ever wonder how a hole in the ground can become a billion-dollar gold mine? I'm John Mason, and today I'm giving you an all-access pass to the thrilling and sometimes risky world of building a mine from scratch. Certainly Ontario is blessed with tremendous mineral potential and a history of production. Northern Ontario specifically is located on the Precambrian shield called the Superior Province, and this particular area hosts high potential rocks, and most of the metallic mining that's taking place in Ontario now, as well as tremendous opportunity for mineral exploration. So this becomes the focal point for the shield. Those shield rocks have been producing in Ontario for almost 150 years, base metals and gold in particular, and started a number of locations, particularly in northeastern Ontario first, before moving to the northwest. As recently as yesterday, mentioned in the throne speech, the potential for critical minerals, precious metals like gold and silver, as well as base metals, is still tremendous. One mine may have 800 to 1,400 companies that are involved with that particular producer. So it's an economy unto itself at one mine. With the price of gold being strong right now, that's really created a lot of the focus on production and exploration. First steps would be acquisition of mineral rights in an area. That is considered the front end of the mining sequence. So staking is the act of acquiring the mineral rights in Ontario. That's done through electronic means. As of 2018, that was introduced under the Mining Act, where one can, anywhere in the world, acquire mineral rights in Ontario. That gains them mineral rights for 2 years, less a day. From that point on, exploration has to take place annually to keep those claims in good standing. So it's a temporary rental of the mineral rights going forward in terms of that acquisition. You could have someone who owns surface rights. It could be a farmer or someone who owns a bush property, a bush lot or whatever, that they have the surface rights. That interaction has to take place. With respect to Indigenous communities and Métis, a consultation protocol is set up. There's a framework set up by the province of Ontario to allow that framework and that practical approach to take place. But in the same breath, it also leads to respect for Indigenous and treaty rights with Aboriginal communities. That's also in play, as is the fact minimal environmental degradation will take place under the Act, and it's policed under the Act itself, as well as the legislation guidelines. Interestingly enough, when one stakes mining claims on Ontario, exploration community, whether it be a prospector, whether it be a geologist, they can research previous exploration records that the Ministry of Mines holds at their resident geologist offices, which are distributed across Northern Ontario, but also in a digital record out of Sudbury, where head office is. It can be accessed online. You can simply research if you're looking at a certain township, for example, in Northern Ontario, that you're looking for gold, for example. You can go into those township archives through the Ministry of Mines and do that in-depth exploration research that'll help you going forward. Because those odds are very slim in terms of making that discovery. It becomes a passion for the individual. You need an individual with passion, and that's why the foundational pieces are the prospecting community and the junior exploration sector. That term really refers to a company that has no revenue from production. They're raising their money on the market through typically the Toronto Stock Exchange. Some may be connected to US markets like NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. So they're raising their money by institutional shareholders purchasing or individual ma and pa shareholders investing in that company. This is the high-risk part of the business prior to projects becoming refined, when more mid-tier and major companies might come along or have revenue from production, and they may be interested in optioning or purchasing that property. In terms of the techniques used by geologists and prospectors, it often starts out with boots on the ground, simply walking properties whereby you're taking samples, you're sending those to an assay lab to see what the results are. You are also employing many times, particularly from the company perspective, geological mapping, doing geochemical surveys, They may be sampling where there's areas of little outcrop. You actually sample the overburden, the material overlying bedrock, to get an idea if there might be metals present. Often prospectors want high percentages of outcrop because they want to do what they can in 2 dimensions. If there are areas of heavy till, the prospector's limited. That's where the mining company has to come in. They'll do geophysics, airborne and ground geophysics quite often. There are various types of surveys that will determine if the likelihood of metals are in that 3rd dimension that aren't visible from surface. And those penetrations can be several hundred meters, and they could be looking for a variety of qualities within those products, within those rocks. So they could be magnetic, electromagnetic, they could be radioactive. There's various types of properties within the rocks that might indicate you have mineralization present. Quick background here with legislative changes. What we find with acts in Ontario, and the Mining Act's no different, legislation would be the baseline, and then regulations and guidelines flow into that. They're the meat on the bones in terms of determining what is required. So the Act itself, up until 1988, believe it or not, was mainly an exploration act. It dealt with the explorer right through to developing a mine, but there wasn't anything to do with closure, financial assurance, rehabilitation on the back end. And that's where the major changes took place between 88 and 91, that 3-year period. So I was involved with writing the legislation with a team of individuals, and then chaired what was called the Assessment or Exploration Working Group. Assessment work refers to the formal name for mineral exploration methodology, any types of exploration techniques that have been employed, that have been filed for, as I mentioned earlier, to keep your claims in good standing. They become a massive database. The antiquated view in the early 80s was such that there were gaps. There were, with technology and evolution changes and new metals being sought for, there were new exploration techniques that had to be taken into account, and it allowed for new technology to come into play. Starts out with financial for sure. CapEx on building a new mine in Northern Ontario, and that's the capital cost to build that mine, mill, associated infrastructure. This is after you may have spent as an explorer 7-8 years of mineral exploration. So just the CapEx for the mine mill construction may be in $800 million to $1.5 billion range. That's been typical of the most recent gold mine builds in Northern Ontario. If we look at examples, Greenstone Mine at Geraldton and IAMGOLD's Cote Lake would classify as that particular piece. Depending on what metal you're looking for, if it is gold, what is that gold price? Gold price is doing very well right now. Is it some other metal? Like for example, platinum, palladium right now, those companies that are developing those projects are stuck on the mud a little bit. The prices has really dropped in the last 2.5 years, and looking for better days ahead. So this fickle business of metal pricing comes into play. Your stock position, what does that sit at? Other factors would include what workforce is available, what contractors are available to build this operation. If you have 2 or 3 mines being built at the same time, that may be a stretch on construction, commercial and industrial companies that you're going to have to employ to build your mine and develop your operation and build your mill. And again, the associated infrastructure, the power you need, the road access, whatever. So access comes into play. Power, as I mentioned, that's critical. And in some areas of Northern Ontario, that can be a challenge, having enough. On the gold mining sector, you are crushing, grinding huge amounts of rock right now because of the price being at $3,200 US an ounce. Tremendous profit potential, but that puts a strain on the energy sector in terms of supply and transmission to those projects. So is that in play? Certainly, with respect to the human element, health and safety is paramount at mine operations, as it is in a lot of workplaces in Ontario, whether it be manufacturing, auto sector, forestry sector, but certainly health and safety on the mining footprint and on the exploration footprint in the bush is very critical, because you can be in remote areas, and the health and welfare of that workforce is very important. The workforce training is an ongoing process for new and also your veteran employees that are working at your operation. That never ends and improves productivity as well as safety on the site. Supply chain logistics are one piece that's very, very crucial to the operation. One mine may have anywhere from 800 to 1,200 companies that engage that particular mine once it's in production. Before production, when it's under construction, the mine and mill may actually have more companies involved because they're building the mine, they're bringing in the components. That's part of your capital costs that I talked about earlier, your CapEx. What is also takes place is the infrastructure setup. Their two top line items in terms of overall expenses when they're operating would be led by workforce, that's their largest cost. Secondly would be infrastructure led by electricity. And that's the transmission to the site, maybe substation, and maybe a variety of other energy requirements, including natural gas or propane usage as well, that feed into that particular mine mill operation. One of my roles when I was with Thunder Bay Community Economic Development was to work on the service and supply side. The service and supply side is a ratio of 2 to 1. Some people feel 3 to 1 in terms of number of personnel that are involved to support a mine. And Thunder Bay, we were able to move the yardsticks from having about 200 service and supply companies to over 400. Some feel maybe 450 exploration service and supply companies. So they would handle a full mining sequence from, and again, mining sequence would include early and advanced exploration, development, construction, mining, and closure. And you want to align your service and supply companies with all of those facets of the mining sequence. And that's one thing that we thought we were very successful at in Thunder Bay. Let me start out with the New Gold Rainy River mine in the Fort Frances area, an area that's about 3.5, 4-hour drive west of Thunder Bay on Highway 11. That particular mine is relatively new, came into production in the 2016 period after 3 years of construction. Prior to that, the president of the company of New Gold Incorporated, are a Vancouver-based firm with one mine in British Columbia, and the Rainy River mine is their second operation. Their president and senior staff negotiated agreements with, believe it or not, 18 First Nation communities and Métis as well. Treaty 3, to give you an idea of the lay of the land, the geography, Treaty 3 communities in the Lake of the Woods, Rainy Lake area are in a very compact geographic setting. That is why 18 communities were involved. Their traditional territory was affected by this mine, and advantages flowing back to them have been significant on the workforce, business development side, and community infrastructure side. So that's a very positive success that was at a chief-to-chief relationship. Again, president of the company, New Gold, dealing with the chiefs, elders, and senior council people in the communities at that particular time. The other one I'll cite is a more recent example, and this would be one of Ontario's newest mines, and it's a gold mine at Geraldton, Ontario, called the Greenstone Mine that Equinox Gold owns. They're also a mid-tier company, Vancouver-based, with mines in various parts of the world. This is their flagship project, though. It's going to be one of Ontario's largest gold producers once they're put their first calendar year in, which is this year, 2025. There's an organization called MDLP, Mindawayan Development, that represents 3 First Nations and others that have come in later that have been involved with business development, impact benefit agreement language with Equinox Gold. And that has led to a successful relationship for workforce training, business development. They're at the point now where many of the community members have been trained on heavy equipment, working in the mills. This is an open pit operation right on Highway 11, and it's very proximal to these particular communities. So it's been very much a success. We see apprentices now that are going to become journey persons going forward. We're seeing females in the sector, which is wonderful to see. It's an area that's been male dominated too long, and we're seeing the inclusion of many more females in the professional, skilled trades and labor aspects of this particular mine operation. So it's very refreshing to see that. In terms of ESG considerations, certainly in the last decade, there's been a lot more focus on ESG. And ESG, when I refer to that, would be E for environment, S for societal, G for governance. So under that acronym, ESG, let's start with environment. Good examples would be tailings ponds, areas that have been, we talked earlier about that being the largest footprint quite often on a mine would be a tailings area. That's where the mill waste, this is not garbage, it's really sand size or silt size material that's been crushed and processed and brought through after the metals have been extracted. Quite often it is benign, but has to be sampled. That particular tailings pond area has to be a good example of the environmental side of protection under ESG. Things like water and air emissions as well qualify for that as well. And also, and this would be ongoing after the life of the mine closed in terms of this type of testing and monitoring and maintenance, because wildlife and fisheries are all also very important to those types of particular considerations. The societal side fits in with human rights and workforce values in terms of diversity, and how does that fit within your company model as you go forward in terms of your hiring practices and in terms of how you handle yourselves on the landscape. The closure plan piece was very significant because now, to protect the people of Ontario and to properly close out a mine operation, because again, these are finite resources, they're going to close someday. You want that site rehabilitated to the nth degree with the necessary consultants, engineering experts, environmental experts that will be brought into play by the company in question. And they had to pay for all of that. They paid for that before actually the project started. All had to be provided to the province of Ontario before you started your project to ensure that it would be closed out properly. The backdrop to this is, with that well over 100-year legacy of production, sadly, there were many open pits, open holes, dangerous sites that were left. And when companies walked away, they walked away prior to the 1980s. So that's all been changed to protect the people of Ontario and to close out a site properly with proper rehabilitation. One of the challenges is with open pit mines that cover a larger footprint. Some of these sites become lakes or water bodies, essentially. That's often what happens with them. Underground mines are capped with concrete caps. Any of the openings are capped. Any of the tailings become, and when I say tailings, this is processed material out of the mill once the metals have been extracted, and it's the waste material. So it's almost of a silt or sand type of grain size, to give one an idea. And that material is put in large holding ponds with dams and berms that control it. When the mine is closed, and it could start actually before the closure, because in some cases companies start what's called progressive rehabilitation. They will actually seed and plant trees on these sites and grow them back. We've had areas that have developed into becoming ski hills, golf courses. They become recreational areas. They become baseball diamonds. So the reuse of these lands goes on if the rehabilitation is done properly to bring them back, to give them a life. There can be scars, there can be areas that cannot be brought back to the way they were. The case is that these particular projects are rehabbed to the point where they're brought back to standards that can be for reuse by the citizens of the province. Certain parts of the province produced uranium for nuclear reactors at some point. Some of those areas are of a more guarded condition, and you will not maybe see activity on those particular sites. In other cases, they've been significantly rehabilitated. In many cases, mining produces tailings that are non-toxic, that are really benign in terms of the metals that they contain. They've been extracted because that's what the value was. Now you simply have what is called beach sand. So it really depends on the site and the location. All that would be covered on the rehabilitation plan by the Ministry of Mines in conjunction with the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. There are a number that come into play. It is a business based on metal pricing, which can be fickle, but with respect to the opportunity on the gold sector, I think it's tremendous. I think we're seeing more involvement there. We're seeing also new types of mineral exploration come into play. The use of drones, the use of high technology that is being developed in a lot of the universities and colleges of Ontario going forward. There's a tremendous history on that, and that really is coming to fruition. That improves the odds of discovery. We're also seeing deeper drill programs in terms of the exploration drill companies that are contracting to the mining companies in terms of what they can do, in terms of their accuracy of drilling, in terms of wedging and defined precision drilling. I think that's a very important piece that's come forward. We're also seeing the use of artificial intelligence to handle massive amounts of data. A number of companies are doing that. So I mentioned earlier the archived data called assessment files with the Provincial Ministry of Mines. I would argue that they are mining the data. So they are really machine learning a lot of this data that will give them insight into exploration, because those odds are long and very slim of finding that next deposit. So this may be a very inexpensive way of taking advantage of other people's exploration. I think we're also seeing the province of Ontario adding to our road networks in the north, and also, as I mentioned earlier, transmission. It's a very challenging piece to have adequate electrical transmission and adequate supply to supply those lines into various areas of Ontario. And we want those two foundational pieces to be there, the roads and the electricity. I would argue the companies will spend the rest of the money to build that mine and operate. But if that foundational piece is not there, it could be a huge detriment to putting a barrier in front of further development on that particular site, depending on where you're located. I think we're also seeing a trend, as I mentioned earlier, of more youth becoming interested in this because of robotics, because of other types of modern innovation that's taken place within the sector. We're seeing many electric vehicles that are underground operational that, ironically, it's going to be interesting. They're going to be mining lithium deposits soon in Ontario that are going to be providing battery chemicals for battery construction that can also go in the same vehicles that are mining the ore underground. The mining sector has given me a wonderful career. I think it's one that's inspirational. As a youth or as a child, it's wanting to work or be in the great outdoors, and that's really something afforded me an opportunity. I've been able to live and breathe and work in various parts of Northern Ontario, and that to me is exciting. I think it opens doors. My advice would be for someone considering a career in mining going forward would be to look upon this as an opportunity to see the world. As a young geologist, engineer, male or female, you have that opportunity. You can work on projects all over the world. Canadian geologists, engineers, metallurgists are well respected in terms of their discovery rates. Money that's raised in the Toronto Stock Exchange for a lot of these companies puts money not just on Canadian or Ontario projects, but over almost 50% of that money raised is also spent elsewhere in the globe by Canadian companies that are active in mineral exploration. Well, thanks very much for your time today. The sector still inspires me to this day as I move on into my senior years. I think it's one can have a great career path with respect to the mining sector, and an opportunity to really grow and have a really exhilarating experience in terms of their chance to see the world and be involved. History of involvement with mineral sector going back well over 100 years. This is the highest paying industrial sector, which I think is going to get the attention of youth, and for them to consider going forward with this very high-tech industry that's innovative, that is creating new solutions every day on the landscape in terms of success rates for discovery of metals. And the Precambrian Shield in Northern Ontario, to me, coming full circle, is the place to be for success going forward to benefit all of us as citizens of the province.